This woman who had grown up in Hachita said that when she moved here as a little girl, she felt like, oh my gosh, I've done moved to hell and the devil doesn't even live here. But with as dry and as desolate as it is, you know, it's just something completely different than I've ever lived in. So, you know, it is enjoyable to see something completely different and to just, you know, have to adapt to the conditions that you're put in. A little game of find the spigot, because we're hoping that's not where we get water from. It'll do though. A note in Gut Hook says it's in the enclosure, so.
Welcome to the mud. I see no spigots. I see no way into the enclosure.
What in the world?
This is the most enclosed of enclosures I've ever seen.
Aaron said he just wants water right now. Huh, after all that, here's the spigot. It's like hunting Easter eggs.
You're always good at that.
I am pretty good at this. Yay! I ended up getting this floppy old hat while I was in town at Dollar General. They really didn't have the greatest selection, so, you know, I got what was more functional, I guess, than some of the others, but function over fashion, I guess. But anyway, yeah, the umbrella, it's just too windy for it a lot of times. I definitely don't want to ditch the umbrella though, even though it's 8 ounces, because I have instant shade whenever I want it. And even if it's windy, if I sit down and kind of put the umbrella on top of me, you know, I can more or less control it in the wind, and I get shade, which is not very common out here. I know I've said it a couple of times now, but seriously, if I had a red lens on this phone, tell me that it wouldn't look pretty much like you would imagine Mars to, because seriously, this is an example of when your trekking pole becomes a snake poker checker. I reckon this water source was made just for us. I don't like these things, but I feel bad watching him die, so. Watch him sting me now to show his appreciation. Crazy wasps. Go and get off of there.
All right, well, here we go. It's like I'm drinking water and eating a steak at the same time. That's not true. It actually tastes fine.
Does it really?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, better than plastic water or town water?
Honestly, yes.
Okay.
Touching us barely.
There goes a dust devil. Dang. So that's what it was, because we felt the sandblast. So we got sandblasted. I wish that I'd had my phone up when it happened, but I didn't, and it was like literally this epic blast. I don't know how to explain it, but my sock went away, perk hat went away, and it felt like our lives were gonna end. That little sign in the saddle is where the trail goes. Starting to see a little bit of elevation. What is it? What is that thing? It's not food, huh? Are you disappointed? No, you can't eat my phone. Well, leave it to me to be distracted by cows and not realize that the trail turned up into the brush back there, and instead I was trying to capture video and pictures of cows. But kind of glad it happened. This gravel road ends up connecting back to the trail, so I haven't cost myself too many miles or too much time. But I ran into the nicest couple that own this ranch here, and their names are Lindy and Ed, but his nickname, or as he says, trail name, is Bimbo. And if you're a Jim Reeves fan, you'll understand why that took us into a conversation of old country music. But they came up and caught me having a conversation with their cows, and they're like, you know you're off trail, right? But go figure, Lindy's trying to get into the world of vlogging and maybe blogging about things that go on here at the ranch and their lives. So I don't know, it was just kind of cool to run into them and talk to them about some of that. And I know I say it over and over, but it's true. It's just the folks that you meet out on a through hike can just be so cool, whether that's fellow hikers or just, you know, people who live locally. So I'm just saying, if you want to meet some cool folks, you might want to try doing a through hike and, you know, chasing some cows.
Very ominous looking.
It is. You're stuck. Hey. We did our biggest miles yesterday. I think it was about 16 and a half. So we only have about 10 to Lordsburg today. The wind hasn't been too terrible the past couple days. You know, we've actually been able to sleep at night, but I will say that it does get kind of like mentally exhausting. You know, you can't hear very well, you got to yell to each other. When you take a break, you got to worry about stuff flying away from you, and no, it just gets tiring, you know, getting sandblasted and the dust blowing in your eyes and nose, all of that. Can't see nothing for hair flying in your face, you know. But it's just part of it, and that'll make us appreciate later in the trail when there isn't as much wind. I know some of y'all are going to suggest mics to me to use so that it's not so windy, and actually I had one that I was trying, didn't work out. It was like glitching. So I've got another one coming in the mail to Lordsburg, so hopefully when I talk there won't be as much wind.
1.4 miles to go.
So we took a nice 0, and thank goodness it was a good time because the winds were getting up to like 60 miles per hour supposedly, and so we kind of hid out of the wind. I mean, we can't hide from all of it, but you know, if you're in town and you want to take a day, then 60 mile per hour windy day is a good time to do it. Head to the post office to forward some stuff and maybe mail some stuff home. And my mom sent me my old tripod back because the new Gecko pod just didn't have the little ball joint to adjust, so swapping that out, and gonna pick up some stuff from the Dollar General, and then we'll be back into the wilderness again. There are attack dogs in Lordsburg. Get him! Get him! Breathing hard.
Yeah.
Where its mom is for real.
It looks like it barely walk.
I know. Hear it breathing. It was up in the shade. It's like, what do you do for it? It makes me like, I wish I knew who owned this ranch.
Yeah. Oh.
So we were walking along minding our business, going back to the trail, and we find this little calf that is out here, and there are no other cows around at all. And it was kind of tucked away, hidden in the shade. So luckily, I got in touch with the couple that I by chance ran into and met the other day, and they knew who owned this property, which is what I was hoping would happen. And they gave us their number, and that man is coming out here to meet us now on his horse so that we can show him the missing calf. So it turns out they think that cow's mama left him for one reason or another. So it's actually good that we called. We weren't overreacting. So I'm just glad that I ended up running into the folks that I did before, that their son owns Chestnut. So like, what are the chances? You know, I took a wrong path, ran into the people that own that property, was able to contact them to find out who owned this property and to let them know that, you know, there was a calf in trouble. So that's pretty cool. And so there's not supposed to be a water source for 15 miles, but he told us where one of his windmills is that's got some water so that we can fill up before that 15-mile one. I'm just glad that we were in the right place at the right time to let him know that that calf was actually in some trouble. Which one of you sorry heifers abandoned your child? When we got to the windmill, noticed that the pipe that flows into the big tank that feeds the trough was sticking outside of the big tank. Thought that was a little wonky, so I texted the owner of the property again and was like, hey, not sure if this is how it's supposed to be. Sorry to bother you again, but the pipe from the windmill is sticking out of the tank, so it's not flowing into the tank. Do you want it like that? Or, because it's flowing onto the ground and just wasting water, which I imagine in the desert isn't a good thing. So sure enough, they said no, they want it pointed back in, and they said, see, this is what CDT hikers normally leave us with. And so I just wanted to make a point. You know, first of all, the CDT doesn't even pass right by that windmill, so, you know, as far as I know, they don't have permission to use that trough as a water source. And so it's sad that people go off on people's property and then mistreat their property. So if you're thinking about through hiking, you've got to think about, you know, the landowners that allow the CDT hikers to be there, and you got to, you know, treat things like you would want your property treated, because otherwise you might not be welcome anymore and they might not be so nice anymore. And you got to think about folks coming behind you. So if you get to use something, leave it how you found it. All right, so bear with me a minute, but you know, sometimes when you're on a trail like this, you have to find ways to make it interesting and kind of play little games. So I've been doing this game of poke the cow turd, because there's like a plethora of cow turds out here. And I've been doing the, you know, poke the cow patty and see if it's still wet, because it's so dry and windy out here that, I mean, I have to imagine like 5 minutes after the turd leaves the cow's butt that it's dry and like a rock. And some of them will be real deceiving. Like some are so obvious that they're dry, and then some are, you know, they look like they should be wet. And I kept poking them, and I kept saying it would be surprising to find one that was actually wet, you know, like a prize, like finding a prize. Well, today is my birthday, and I was telling Aaron that, you know, the biggest birthday present I could get today was finding a wet cow turd, and we just found one. And the funny part of all this is we're beelining for that windmill that has the water that we had permission to from the man who owns the calf that we just saved. So if we hadn't saved the calf after running into Chestnut's people, because that's the only way that was possible, then we would have never found the wet cow turd just now. So it's pretty incredible, and it's all coming around full circle.
I'm not a professional here.
No, you're learning. This is great.
Happy birthday to you.
Yay! I just turned 32, and with it being my 32nd birthday, I've really been thinking a lot about my biological father. He passed away when he was 32 years old, and I was pretty much a baby, so I never got the chance to know him. I know that we have 3 things in common for sure, and that's that he was an engineer, he loved his dog, and he loved the outdoors. As I get older, I find myself, you know, wondering who is the person that makes up the other half of me, and I think that being in nature and knowing that he loved it is something that helps me feel connected to him. And I've been told that if he was alive, I would basically have to beg him not to through hike with me. And I think that because he passed away at such a young age, that probably had a huge influence on me to change the way that I live my life and not to go by the cookie cutter design and do exactly what society expects of me, but to live my life how I want to. So I think that one of my biggest goals, other than hiking the CDT, is making sure that I make it to age 33 for him, and whatever years I have beyond that, to live every bit of it to the fullest.
A brand new dance that never has been done. Don't. Who thinks we're silly? You be Daffy and I'll be Dilly. We'll order up 2 bowls of chili. Send the woods on fire.